When you're chasing your dreams, you have to put in a lot of hard work. And Danny Moll defines what it means to do work. Danny is not just the drummer of two up-and-coming bands. He's also their manager as well. Providing the backbeat for the bands The Jays and Princess, Danny is also providing a great example of what it takes to make it in the music business. Not just putting in work as a musician, Danny has spent time perfecting his craft as a sound engineer and even as a carpenter. This all-around entrepreneur is all about figuring it out and going for it. Going after his dreams at a young age, finding success, and going on tour, Danny learned a lot about what it takes to be successful as an artist. He also learned a lot from the School of Hard Knocks. And what Danny has learned, he now shares with others, ultimately finding a way. So check out how to do work with Danny Moll.
The pendulum swings, they gave me a choice, so I had to leave. But don't get me wrong, it wasn't with ease. I guess I can handle the baggage I bring.
Grew up in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and then when I was about 11 or 12, I guess, we moved out to Tequila. I went to high school out there, and then went down to the city when I was about 18. Yeah, man, just kind of never looked back. I've bounced back and forth every now and again, but I try to stay downtown. Everything outside the perimeter is just weird. I don't like it.
Well, it's funny because, obviously living out here in the Sticks for forever, and obviously I have a different set of circumstances with kids and all, but I hadn't been going back into the city since Georgia State days. And, it felt really cool to kind of get back in there, kind of get back into that vibe of the city again. To feel the pulse of
Yeah, there's no pulse out here, man. Everything's just so generic. One of the things I figured out when I was touring was most exits look the same. It's the same Starbucks, the same Walmart, the same Love's truck stop, whatever. There's
suburbia.
Right, man, all the houses look the same. A neighborhood in Des Moines, Iowa is the same as a neighborhood in Beaufort, Georgia. There's nothing to it, and I'm not an early morning guy. I'm a night guy. I work in the entertainment industry, man. Where am I going to go and be entertained in Beaufort, Georgia? There's nothing here that I really want to go see. Oh, another Journey tribute band? Cool. Another karaoke night at some dingy bar with some woman crying her heart out into some country song that I really didn't want to hear the original rendition of. Definitely not hers. It's you want to go to the bowling alley? No, I don't want to do that. That's...
What's going on at 51 Main or whatever?
37 Main, dude. Oh, my God. You know what's funny? That used to be a really, really cool jazz club. They had a back room that was built specifically for piano
when it was
and
in Beaufort, when it was in that little spot in Beaufort, it wasn't actually so bad. Now they've got one in Johns Creek, in a strip mall.
Dude, it's...
But to your point, though, yeah, the suburbanization,
mediocre generica, man. Leftover Crack said it best.
There's no depth, there's no texture, there's no.
But downtown, even just in our neighborhood of Grant Park, we've got this really cool mom and pop shop, bar restaurant called Dakota Blue. We've got an excellent pizza place, Grant Central, right there, a block from our house.
Well, and you also work at one of the coolest spots around, man.
Yeah,
Smith's
dude.
Bar, dude. That place
is rowdy.
Goes down in history, man. I guess we should probably go ahead and get started here. Yeah, let's do that. This is the Extraordinary Podcast, and my guest today is Danny Moll.
What's up?
How are you, man?
Oh, I'm living.
Another day in paradise. So we were just talking about what the first time we hooked up was one of the iconic spots of Atlanta, and you actually get to work there. And last time I was there, I got to watch you perform at Smith's Old Bar, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's a cool joint. All of our staff is very eclectic and really... people make a place. You could have any place. Yeah. I've seen venues in strip malls, right? The people were so cool and so great that it didn't matter where it was.
Right, right.
In this case, it just so happens that we have one of the oldest bars in Atlanta. I think it might be the oldest, actually. And we've got two amazing venues. We've got some great sound guys. We've got a great staff. We've got great booking agents who keep great talent coming to the doors every single night. And the party never stops, man.
Yeah. What's so cool for me was the fact that, I mean, 20 years ago, I was at that same bar, lugging the same gear, down the same. Well, now they have an elevator, but like helping out my old buddies back in the day.
Elevator, dude.
Yeah. Does the elevator work?
It does. It does. And like, okay, so this is the second time that I've worked there, right? And the first time I worked there, they did not have the elevator.
Yeah.
And
that
so
gear
you
up
had to
those
like
stairs was a
lug those
nightmare.
refrigerator base cabs up those stairs,
The base
dude.
cabinets were the worst.
Oh my God, dude. You couldn't pay me to do that again. Never.
Yeah, but it was really cool though, because when I went out back and met you, it was right there in that scene, and that was the first like instant nostalgia moment for me. It was cool to see like it really hadn't changed. It really had that same vibe.
No,
I felt
I-
like it was exactly 20 years ago.
I don't think a thing like that can change, man. If you start trying to fix what isn't broken, you're going to destroy the vibe, and the vibe is everything. That's why people come.
Well, that's
you know?
why they're filming movies in that place now.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. What got you started down this path? Let's get back to the roots a little bit, because you've got quite a background in the music world. Where did it all get started, man? Where were those seeds planted?
There's two things that I can remember, some of my earliest memories of music. When I was growing up, I have an autistic brother, and he's awesome. He's the best. What's up, Johnny? I hope you get to hear this.
Very cool.
What started me in music was like my dad playing to me and my brother at night before bedtime. That's how he'd get us to go to bed, because we never wanted to go to bed.
And your dad was a player. He was a musician.
Yeah, he toured around in a band called the Princetons in the 60s with Peter, Paul, and Mary, anti-war movement, the whole nine.
Nice. The whole folk thing.
Oh, yeah,
That's right
big
in my
time.
wheelhouse.
Big
So
time.
he'd play a little acoustic for you from
Yeah,
time to
and
time?
he would improv songs about whatever we wanted to hear about. And I always wanted to hear about trains. My brother always wanted to hear about vacuums. I don't know if you ever heard a country love song about vacuum cleaners.
About a vacuum.
But my dad wrote the Dustbuster Blues. I'll never forget it the rest of my damn life, dude.
We're going to have to add that track onto here.
I'm telling
get
you.
you to record it for us.
Dustbuster, she can't cut the mustard. I lost my dustbuster. I'm not a man anymore.
That is awesome.
So there's that.
Well, clearly there
and,
was some seeds planted there.
That made me want to play the guitar, because I just was watching him play, and I was like, man, that's really cool. I want to do that.
Awesome.
And then he was also a theater director at First Baptist Lutheran Church, which I clearly didn't pick up that side of it. But
There's still hope for you.
Good luck. We were always at the church, man. We were going to and from the church, and they had these gospel tapes, and it was that song that Nitty Gritty Dirt Band did, "May the Circle Be Unbroken," and I just remember hearing that
Woodstock
chorus,
tune.
and like that was just. Something was there, It's just like you wanted to listen to that again, and I was like, man, I love this tune. Obviously as a kid, you don't have conceptions about religion or what anything means. It's just like you're just vibing
just
off
digging
the
the song,
sound
yeah.
and the rhythm and the feeling, and I loved it. And then when I was about, I guess 7, they made the mistake of getting me a clock radio. Emphasis on the radio.
Yeah, right.
So I'd wait till they went to bed, and then I'd turn my clock radio as loud as I thought I could get away with it. And I'd listen to like Star 94's, Rick D's and the Weekly Top 40, all the great 90s stuff.
So awesome.
Then, fall in love with like Third Eye Blind and TLC and Green Day, and just like, whoa, dude, there are people out here making some really interesting stuff. And then, getting into rock and roll, and that's kind of how that became a thing.
That's really cool. That's funny that you say that, because for me, when I was younger, the top 40 thing was such a cool thing. Back then, we'd have like a jam box, and you'd put it in a cassette tape, and when that show would start, we would record it.
Yeah, the
Record
cassette
the
tapes.
whole thing.
Oh my God, I can remember
Yes.
sitting up once I got a proper boombox and doing the same thing, man. Oh my God.
Or you'd have to wait for that song to
Yeah,
come on,
and then
you'd
catch
kinda
it right
record
when
Yeah. It's like that is a struggle that just does not exist
Dude,
now.
these kids will never know.
But that
Like,
makes me feel good, because I feel like you're kind of a young kid too, because I've certainly got a couple years on you, but to hear you have some of that similar kind of experience makes me feel good about
dude,
me.
I feel like I was like I'm young, but I was like the last generation that played outside and didn't have the internet and all that stuff.
I kind of feel the same way from time to time too. And what was interesting, like I went through this weird progression where like I got, for whatever reason, back in those days, you could listen to the radio. They'd have like a 50s channel.
Yep.
Then they'd have like a 60s Woodstocky kind of hippie type thing. And then they'd have like a modern, at the time, modern rock, dating myself. But I went through this progression where I would spend a significant amount of time with each like generation of music, and then once I felt like I had that generation down, then I went to the next one, and I felt like it really kind of gave me like a little musical education to kind of learn all the different genres and stuff, and it eventually took me to gospel and Johnny Cash and some of that stuff too. I mean, all that stuff.
Mine, I didn't get into the history of music really until I found punk rock, and what was happening was, it was the summer that Sum 41 put out All Killer No Filler. Blink-182, Enema of the State had already been out, but they put out the Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and I don't know, man. It was just like this overwhelming sense of pop punk having this surge, man. It was right when all that started to really come to the forefront of modern music culture. And I was walking through Target, and like I had this sense that there had to be something a little harder and a little less hokey out there
than all the pop stuff.
Yeah. And I saw this CD with a bunch of monkeys on the front of it that said Punkorama. It was Volume 6. It was this old compilation Epitaph Records used to put out. I didn't know any of the bands. I had no clue what it was. I was just like, I want to listen to that. And that started everything, man. It had No Effects, Bad Religion, Bouncing Souls.
Was it the artwork that drew you to it?
Well, yeah, initially, and it said punk on it, and I was like, well, how bad could it be? It can't be any worse than hearing TLC for like the 18th millionth time.
Right.
Like,
well, because I wonder, because that is one aspect of music that is now gone. Right, like you don't have album covers like you used to. And another musician that I interviewed, Jason
I don't
Reichert,
know about that.
Well, I mean, you do, but like from a consumption standpoint, when somebody's going to go listen to your song, they're going to buy it on iTunes or something. They're going to buy it on a digital platform.
Oh, right,
so they're not going to get to like
see it in the store and be like, oh, that looks cool.
Experience. Yeah, you'd be flipping through. I mean, there were albums that I bought purely based on the art. And other musicians that I talked to did the same thing. They would play a record based on.
I think you can still do that, in record shops. But you're right. The amount of people doing it is way small.
I mean, even just to say a record shop. I mean, that's so few and far between now. Another
reason why I like living downtown, because there's record shops. We have those.
And I love the fact that this kind of culture of retro things has kind of come around, because it's given a place for record shops.
Well, vinyl's going to outsell CDs this year.
I'm not surprised. Well, because CDs are that's another dead.
Well, and I think it
platform, right? Another dead
I can't remember. At any rate, we're seeing pressing plants popping up, and like
see Jack White. I mean, he's got his own pressing plant now. Like he can press his own vinyl.
Oh yeah,
that's really cool. Have you been up to Nashville? Have you seen any?
I have.
That's really cool. Third Eye or Third?
I want to go up there and make a little 7-inch in his booth thing.
That would be really
right. Yeah. Like how cool would that be?
So cool, yeah.
But yeah,
with the elephant head.
I found that, and then like that just kick-started everything. I mean, you've got bands like No Effects that were singing about the history of punk rock from time to time, and so you start getting these references, and you're like, oh, well, I wonder who that is, and you start going and looking, and then you start doing some reading, and like you go to your bookstore and you see, oh, they have books on the history of punk rock and books on the history of indie and the history of hardcore, and it's like you start really digging, and then you start getting real obscure with it and trying to find these little black and white documentaries.
Right, start going deep.
And that's what got me started on music history. After that, sure, I went back to the 60s and 70s and 50s and all that stuff and learned about all those movements, but for me, punk rock was the one that really was just like, wow, dude, what a cultural phenomenon.
Punk has a cool history, man. The whole CBGB days, and I mean the whole looking at how that whole culture kind of emerged, kind of anti-pop. I mean, there's some cool history there. I love it. I'm all about it.
There's a lot of feeling there, which is what I loved about it. It was the first thing that I heard, and I was like, you know what? This is a safe place for me. I feel welcome here. This music speaks to me. These people feel like I feel. I didn't get that from, like, listening to pop music or listening to Nickelback or whatever.
Right,
you know what I'm saying? Right. I'm like, yo, that dude's pissed off. Me too.
Yeah. And I think so much about music in general is about emotion.
Yeah.
And I think so much of good music is not even so much about raw talent as it is just expressing that emotion in a way that relates to people.
Right. And I think one of the things that's cool about, subculture music is the rawness with how they express that. The unapologetic way that they go about saying, no, this is what it is. This is how I feel, and this is okay.
What appeals about it to me, coming from my world of this podcasting thing and putting yourself out there, it's that just do it, man. Just put something out there and get it out there.
Well, again, with punk rock, it was like, dude, you don't have to have a record deal. You don't have to have a
perfect
suit. You know, we cut our first demo on a camera, like a video camera, that one of our homies had stolen from the AV room at Decula. And he brought it over to our friend's basement, and we just played through like 3 or 4 songs, and that was our demo.
That was your demo. That's
and it didn't matter. People loved it.
Yeah, right? If the music was good, that's all that really mattered.
Dude, the energy was there.
Exactly.
You know, the passion and the fury and the anger and like just the raw feeling was present, so it didn't matter. I guess that's to say that I thought it was very cool that punk rock had this thing. Just because it's DIY doesn't mean it has to suck. And just because you want to do it doesn't mean you have to do it like somebody else tells you have to do it. You can do it however you want. There aren't any rules to this.
I love that. That's what makes it so cool. It's very freeing. Kind of leads me into what was your first big win? Or have you had an aha moment where you felt like, man, I'm really onto something here?
You know, when I was working on the 1978 Champs record with Lee Diaz down at Earth Sound Studios in Valdosta, that was a hard record to make, man. I didn't have a band. I was short money. I had to like go run open mics and stuff and trivia nights and karaoke nights in bars just to get what I could, and then just keep trying to funnel that to Lee and get back down there and just piece this thing together over a year. Now, towards the end, I was able to draw on some great people like Aaron Lacine, who's now a part of Starbenders, or Joe Sanchez, who's still working with me on some new Champs stuff. But most of it was just me and Lee, and he didn't know me well enough to let me like stay in his studio overnight. Of course, we can do that now, but back then, dude, for a couple nights I was sleeping in the back of my Expedition in the ghettos of Valdosta, where you could go to sleep to gunshots. It was not safe. It was super scary. Then another couple nights, I ended up meeting the owners of the tattoo shop down the street, who were all like crazy meth heads, but they offered me their couch and left a key under the doormat for me, and I was like, well, beats the back of an SUV.
That's great.
You know, it was tough, man. It was a real struggle to make that piece of art. I thought it was good, but I didn't know what anybody else was going to think about it. So, you know, I showed Aaron the demos and stuff.
And that was the one where you ended up having to do a lot of the tracks all yourself, right?
Yeah.
You ended up having to cover all the instruments.
Yeah, initially. I mean, we had Matt Lynch come in and redo the drums at the end of it. And, of course, Lee played bass on everything because he's a way better bass player than me. But, you know, for the bulk of it, yeah, it was just me and Lee. So I got back from doing that, showed Aaron the tracks. He signed on. That was cool. We started making a business plan, and, you know, here's how we could do it. We read, like, 10 years worth of these things called IFPI music reports, which are, like, the playbook for the industry and what they're going to do that year.
Huh.
So we got some insights into how we should be doing things out of...
How did you come about finding out about that or get that piece of knowledge?
Well, we did...
Not to get you on the sidetrack.
We did a lot of research on the internet. The internet's a beautiful thing, and most people use it for memes, but if you want to learn some stuff, you very much can. So figured all that stuff out.
That's a really helpful little bit of knowledge.
Well, you got to know how to find them, too. You can never get the current one unless you pay for it. I think when we were doing it, it was like $1,000 to get it.
So you could just get a backlog?
Yeah. You'd like illegally download them, and not to incriminate myself, I would never take part in piracy. That's not my style. But no, so the aha moment for me was like, we finished the record. We're pushing a single. It was a song called Alamo, and dude, it was the one. Everybody loved it. And I was just like taken aback, like, whoa, this is wild, man. People are going apeshit for this song. I thought it was the worst song on the record.
Isn't it funny how that always works?
We go to shoot this music video, and we go out to this farm. Darren Orr's father let us come out to his farm in Dawsonville and shoot this thing. And we built it as like a mini Woodstock, right? Like, hey, come camp out. We're shooting a music video. Come party with us. So we told him we wanted to have a bonfire.
That seems to be a common theme for your videos. Come hang out, let's have a party.
Well, I mean, you can't beat that, right? Like, It's a good way to launch, you know? It's a good way to show people, like, hey, people will come. This is a cool thing. You should get about this. Look how much fun we're having.
Absolutely.
But so we show up the day of the shoot at like 10 in the morning. And like, dude, you've got to think. We've made an entire record, paid a film crew, secured a location, bought all this stuff, rented all these props. Like, dude, if no one comes, we're about to look real stupid. And I'm an anxious person anyway. I don't know if you can tell by me nervously fiddling with this jewel or my feet constantly doing drum rudiments. I hate film days. I hate show days. I hate release days because, like, for me, it's just
stress factor.
Oh my God, it's terrible. It feels like someone just wringing your neck the entire time. But people started showing up, and then they kept showing up. And we had also told the people that worked on the farm, hey, we'd like to have a bonfire. So they dug us this big pit. They'd been chopping down trees and cutting them up with chainsaws for days.
So you had
it was a 25-foot tall, like,
Texas A&M
massive fire.
Nice.
Right? So we get to the chute, and I look behind us, and there's like 60 or 70 people out on this farm behind us, you know, and this giant fire. And then we start filming, and just all hell broke loose, man. It was bedlam and anarchy. People that I knew that were timid and mild-mannered and very quiet are suddenly windmill dancing through the pit that I didn't even know was going on behind me as I'm throwing my guitar around my neck. And just, I don't know, man, like, waking up the next morning and seeing the reaction and then seeing the cuts of the video afterwards was just like, wow, dude.
You really had something.
We're on to something here, you know, and then seeing what that grew into, like, the moments just kept coming. It was really, really cool, man. I would say it was humbling, but I wasn't very humble back then. So
an ego booster for sure. I mean, it's affirming if nothing else.
Yeah, it was.
And that's very rewarding.
It gave me. It was the first time in my life that I ever finished something that I started. I'd tried to do a lot of stuff before that.
Huge.
But none of that really came to fruition, and I just would always, like, my dad used to say I was like the king of unfinished projects, you know.
You and me both.
But that one I took all the way to the end, you know, and it let me know.
That last 5% is always the hardest, right? Like,
oh, absolutely. But it let me know that I could do that,
yes.
you know, and it gave me a sense of self-worth and self-confidence. And I guess, like,
it let you know you belong, kind of, didn't it?
Well, it wasn't that. I mean, it was, but it was just like letting me know that I was capable of more than I knew, you know.
Excellent.
Because even the whole time we were doing all that stuff, I was full of doubt. I had no clue, you know. Nobody wants to look like an idiot, you know.
Well, and it's scary. I mean, quite frankly.
Terrifying, but it's worth it.
But it's so worth it,
if you can beat that shit back, you know.
So that was a big win. Tell me about a tough loss, or what I like to call my favorite failures. You have an experience that you learned a lot from?
Man, yeah. Let me think of how to do this without incriminating anybody.
Yeah, remember stat of limitations and
yeah,
all those
right.
kinds of things, because we have had to edit out some things before.
Oh, well, it's not that. It's just,
trouble.
you know, I don't want to call anybody out. That's not chill. Man, losing my first and second recording studios was pretty big loss. I'd partnered up with a guy, and it was just not a good partnership. We needed him for his gear. We had courted this band that we really wanted to work with. All the work we'd done in that studio over, like, maybe a 2-year span had led to that moment, you know, of like, hey, we locked down the record that we wanted. Let's make it. But we needed some gear to make it, so I was like, hey, dude, come do this. And I knew he was crazy. I knew he was crazy. But I thought he was manageable crazy because, hey, I've managed plenty of crazy people.
You manage crazy right now.
Yeah, I'm telling you, dude. It's kind of like part of the job title, like... You're the ringleader at the circus, and it's quite a circus. But that didn't end up being the case, man. He and I split in a very... What's the word? We split in a very, I mean, dare I say, violent fashion. It was not cool. And, you know, once he pulled his gear out of there, which he had to, I didn't want it. You know, I didn't want anything to do with that guy. I had to shut that studio down, move studios. We're in the middle of a record, by the way, while this is happening, and the band is losing it.
Oh,
they are not happy.
Yeah. They don't have a studio to record in anymore.
Right. And, you know, it was tough, man. And so I went to this other studio. Granted, we did get to finish that record. I thought it was excellent. I'm very, very proud of what we did. The band would probably say that now. At the time, they were not happy. It took longer than they thought that it should, but I don't think they understood what they were asking or what they were getting into, so whatever. And then, you know, I kept working in this other studio, which should have been a huge leg up for us because the person we were working with was a name.
In the industry.
Yeah, you'd know it if I said it. But, you know, due to some circumstances, he lost his place. It was a nightmare. The last month there was just having to deal with somebody who was very sick. I was pretty sick myself, but not quite like that. It just, winding up, coming from managing a rehearsal hall, having the biggest studio in it, making a name for yourself in the scene, making all these great recordings and records and throwing festivals, and then moving to an even bigger name studio and doing these things, and then going to like unemployed, sleeping on your friends' couches, picking up drumming for bands so that you have a place to stay that night. It's a pretty big L, and it was a hard one to swallow. It took me a couple months to pull out of that one just because I was so bummed out. How do you go from music videos, studios, glory, all this stuff to just like, yo, I don't know how I'm eating today. Can I please sleep on your couch and have some of your ramen?
So what was your biggest takeaway from all of that? What did you learn?
Well, a lot of stuff. You got to be careful who you get into business with.
For sure. Yeah.
It very much matters. You might be able to do some incredible things, but you can never control another person. And even if I could, I don't think that I'd want to. But, also like, well, no, I guess that's it. You just got to be careful. And then you got to take care of yourself. I let a lot of myself go, thinking that it was worth it, because if I did that and just kept giving myself to this thing that ultimately wasn't serving me, that, there'd be this big payoff in the end. But that didn't happen. What logically was supposed to happen happened. It all went to hell in a handbasket. So, you got to take care of yourself too. That's the most important thing. If you're not right, then nothing that you're going to try to accomplish will be right either. You can't help people if you're still hurting.
And I guess we kind of jumped right into this. We should talk about all the different things that you're doing they all fall under your umbrella. You're in two bands, but you're also managing both of those bands.
Yes.
So tell me about that. How do you balance that role between, and especially as the drummer of the band, because the drummer has a certain place, kind of generically speaking, within a band's role, so to speak. And then you've also got the role of manager, which is completely different dynamic. So how do you manage those two?
Well, it's a little easier than you might think. As a drummer, man, like, dude, I am not the flashiest drummer in the world, and to be super honest, I don't like the guys that are. I don't think most songs need that.
It's not their job.
Hey, look, pick your place, pick your time. Everybody gets a time to show off, man. Guitar players get a solo, keyboard players get a break, whatever. But, for me, I try to just play to the song and play what it needs. And for the bands that I'm working with, I mean, it's indie punk rock on the side of Princess, and then, jazzy alt rock on the side of the Jays. It just doesn't need that much, man. It needs a backbone. And some filler here and there. So, I mean, yeah, there's been a couple times where I'm like, hey, we should change this. We should do this way. But I try to, like, just be a supporting member rather than a writing member 90% of the time if I can. And then when you come
that makes sense with that managerial relationship that you want to try to have also.
Well, dude, they already have great art. I don't need to make this my thing.
Right. It's not.
I mean, I need to put a little bit of myself into it, sure, because I bring something to the table just like everybody else. But, like, you had a great thing before I came along. My only interest is in trying to help you make that thing as good as it can be and get it out there the best way that I know how to do it. And we're constantly learning as groups how to do that as well. We're all taking marketing courses so we can figure out the best way to get things seen and heard.
That's brilliant.
It's like, dude, you were good. You were good before me. I mean, like, yeah, one of the bands, I won't say which one, had some membership issues that were causing some things. So, yeah, I had to step in and take care of that. But, we're brother and sister bands, so, like, one of my bandmates from the other band helped me do that, too. It wasn't solely me that did it. I just identified a problem. It was like, hey, here's how we deal with it, I think. And what do you guys think? All I can do is try to lead people in what I know to be the best direction today. And if that direction changes, then let's go that way as well. And that's kind of how I look at it.
Well, and you also have a really good influence on those guys, and I'll tell you, I want to
sometimes.
I want to well, in the manner
they're going to hear this and be like, yeah, sure he does.
Not in the traditional sense of values or whatnot, but in the sense of you were talking about, like with the marketing, knowing how to manage the business, how to handle the business side of trying to make it in the music industry. There's lots of very, very talented musicians that are complete failures because they don't understand the business side of that.
Well, I mean, look, dude, a band is a money hole at first, and it's gonna be. Gear costs money. Yeah. Merchandise costs money. A van and trailer costs money. Gas costs money. Time off work costs money, and people don't think about that. How much time? What's your time worth, and how much time did you spend doing this thing, rehearsing? And what did it cost you to get to and from rehearsal? How many shows are you playing? How much is that time worth? And how much did it cost you to get to and from the shows? And how many members are we going to multiply that by? There's a very real cost associated with all this stuff. And at first, dude, you're not going to make a lot of money. It would be foolhardy to think that you are. It would be an unfair expectation. But, you know, my interest with these dudes, or women, or whoever, is trying to get them to a point where we can turn a profit. Or, you know what, break even would be cool too. That's just a fine goal for a band to have. Man, if you're breaking even,
yeah, especially when you're
doing all right.
Yeah.
So the way that we're looking at doing that, I don't think it's going to be shows for a while unless we just happen to get really lucky. And I don't bank on luck. That's not a smart gamble. I mean, every business move is a gamble, but you have smart ones and not smart ones. And I just don't think hoping is going to get it done. I think hard work will get it done. That's been my experience throughout my life, be it through carpentry, music, whatever. We're looking at revenue streams, right? Because businesses have revenue streams and things like taking control of our own merchandising, right? If we can cut down the upcharge of a merch company, right? And let's say print our own 1 or 2 color shirt designs. That's not that hard to do, and I know people that do it, and I know how to do it. All you got to do is build a press, get some screens. If you don't want to learn photo emulsion, which I personally don't feel like screwing with, we want to own the resource because that cuts our costs down. But then it also gives us a resource that we can give to other people and turn a little bit of a profit while still undercutting the big guys and say, hey, you know, we can give back to our local scene and say, all right, look, we got to make something, but we don't need to make as much as that guy because you probably only want 30, 40 shirts, man. Like, we can bang that out for you. Sure, why not? You know, and if we make $1 or $2 a shirt, great, you know, and then we can put that money back into the band so that we're not taking our own personal money into the band so that you can have your life just like it was before you started doing this and still do this. You know, we're looking at doing it with vinyl plotting machines for stickers and decals. We're looking at doing it with button makers, anything really that we can find a way to like brand that cuts our cost and it gives us something that we can market to other people within our scene and give them a cheaper option. Well, a more inexpensive option because cheaper is generally associated with less quality.
Right.
You know, but it also, I think, for ourselves, it gives us another selling point of purchase saying like, hey, not only is this a cool shirt, but we did this ourselves.
Yeah.
That's why this is cool. That's one more reason you should support this. And I think fans respond to that kind of thing.
That's one of the challenges obviously for young bands that are just up-and-comers, which I'll kind of put you guys in that category. Because I also have talked with other musicians that have been around for decades and, you know, won Grammys and things like that. And it's become really, really difficult, if not practically impossible, for musicians to make a living. And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, dude, they killed, you know, we talked about those IFPI music reports earlier. I forget which year it was, but they flat out said they were going to kill the CD sale and go to streaming because they couldn't beat piracy. That's the only reason they did it. They had to make something. Something's better than nothing. So now you have Pandora and Spotify and Apple Music, which was late to the game, and I'll never know how or why. But, you know, it's they put industry over artistry. And that's a big bummer because, like, at the end of the day, they're preserving the skeleton of what they had in place as best that they're able, and they're passing that down to us. And it's just like but why
that model doesn't work anymore.
You know, that's why we went to trying to do our own merch is because, like, dude, that's how you make your money now. It's all merchandising.
Yeah.
You think Spotify's going to cut a band like us a check that's worth anything more than about 20 cents? Hell no. Nope. Not at this point.
Well, and not only that, but they're also, with the conglomerates buying up a lot of the venues, and particularly the big venues, they're controlling your ability to make money through merchandising, through sales, through performing. You know, like first you can make money by CDs and albums, the actual content is how it all started out. You can make it that way. Then it went to virtual. Then you got in pirating and all that. Then you've lost that ability to make money off the actual track. Now you're just putting it up there for people. And yeah, I mean, people are still selling it, but with the downloads and everything else like that, that's really, unless you're that top 1% of musicians, that's not really a viable way to make money.
No.
So then you try to make money through performances, to go into doing shows and things like that, and live performances. But now they're undercutting that. So it's like, what other options are there for a musician to make a living anymore?
Dude, it's tough. It's real tough. I mean, that's why I think you see a lot of dudes going and playing in bar bands and cover bands.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. Jason Reichardt from Arrested Development, lead guitarist, I mean, amazingly talented guy, is performing with his wife at Smoke Rings, a barbecue joint downtown.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, they're playing some other really cool spots and all that, and they're not Arrested Development. They're up and coming. But, I mean, this is one of the most talented musicians probably in the Southeast.
I think,
and he's playing in
I think in corporate America they call it diversifying your portfolio.
Yeah.
And it sucks, man. It's
so
like,
as a musician, how do you do that?
Well, like I just said, I think it's resource ownership, man. It has to be.
Own the resources. That's an interesting concept. I never thought of that before. Because
what are your other options, man?
That's what I'm wondering.
You need to. I've told all my guys. I'm like, listen, you need to find a job or a trade that will allow you to get paid what you need to be paid to live the way that you want to live, and that also will be cool with you needing to travel and do stuff. That's a big piece of it. You know, if you're working at, like, let's say, Domino's Pizza, you're not making much anyway, right? And then if you get a tour offer, and I know this from experience, you're gonna take it. Let's just be real. You're gonna go. But, like, are you gonna have a job when you get home? Yep. Are you gonna have 3 more weeks of, like, because you're probably not gonna come home with much. If it's your first, second, third time out, what do you do when you get home? You know, are you gonna have a job? So, you know, being self-employed is a really good way to go about it if you can do it like that. I know people who specialize in internet marketing for all kinds of different ventures, and they can work from the road. That's really cool. I'm a carpenter, so I can always hustle up work that way. You know, I mean, there's always going to be a place.
You do carpentry work on the road?
Well, not on the road. Actually, sometimes, yeah. I've repaired some trailers and road cases.
That's a universal skill because being a carpenter as well, that comes in.
Dude,
handy.
I hustled so much money working at the old Masquerade at 695 because they laughed at me, man, because I always had my tools with me.
Best place ever, though.
Oh yeah, it was.
I'm so distraught that place is no longer there, and then they're tearing it down and redoing it as we speak.
Well, I always had my tools on me, and bands would come in, and they'd been out on the road for like a month, and their cases were messed up or something was broken, and they'd be like, "Hey, you can't fix this, can you?" And I'd be like, "Yes, I can. Do you have some money for me?" Whatever you got. I mean, it's fine.
It's a good end for sure.
Nah, I would have done it anyway, but
one of the things that I'm fascinated with is flow and how you can get into a flow state and accomplish a lot. And a lot of times you see that, like in the restaurant business, for example, when through the rush, you know, and you're slinging food everywhere, and you just, like, 2 hours goes by like that, and it disappears. The only other place that I really see that easily recreated is in the studio.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that, or how you get into that flow state, or what your experience is like that in the studio?
So it was pretty natural for me. I very much want to be efficient when I'm in the studio. Getting in that flow state is just like, I don't know, man. I wanted to be an engineer because I loved music, right? I loved how it sounded. I loved listening to it. I loved picking apart the rhythms and thinking about it, you know, and, well, what could go here, what could go there. And I love helping people get what's in their heads out into the world, you know? Like, that's my role as an engineer. And then, you know, encouraging the good ideas, discouraging the bad ones.
From the musicians?
Adding what's missing. Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it was pretty natural. You just jump in and start going. Like, you've got your list of how you do things, you know? Like, okay, we need to start with scratch tracks to a click. Like, if you don't have that, we need to go ahead and get that right now. And let's go ahead and bang that out as quick as possible. These are not the keepers, so let's not spend too much time on it. Let's go. Then it's like, okay, let's get drums set up. Let's mic them up. Let's sound check. all right, now we're into drums. We've all agreed that the scratch tracks of the click are what we're going to go with. This is how the song goes. Now we know what the rhythm needs to be. So let's go ahead and bang that out. And again, serve the song. Do what it needs to be done. Then from there, it's like, okay, cool. Let's plug in that bass DI if you're going to go that route, or mic up a cab if you're going to go that route. Let's get that done. It's just a natural progression if you're a real engineer. It's not very hard to do. Things get tricky when you start talking about lead guitars and keyboards and vocals and layering things and soundscapes. But even that is just like, you've already knocked out the meat and the potatoes of the song, and hopefully you've done that very efficiently. So now, it's not that you slow down your work pace, but you start experimenting a little more and saying, okay, we've got the bulk of it. We've got 90% of it. Where does this other 10% need to live? What can we do here? And if they don't have ideas, then I usually have, a bag of tricks that never fails me. And I'll just reach in there and grab one and be like, let's try this.
Did you have any key mentors that helped teach you, particularly the part of the because you kind of just talked about how there's a process to it. Did you have anybody that kind of taught you that, or how did you learn or become so proficient at that process?
Well, I've been in recording studios since I was 17 doing stuff. So if I had to give some shout-outs to people that taught me things, there's this dude, Alan Ploth. I don't even know what he's doing anymore, but that was the guy that signed my first punk rock band and got us in there and got us doing things. And that we didn't know anything about anything as far as recording went. We'd never done it. And he was patient enough to take us through that path for the first time. There's another gentleman, Matt McClellan. He was a dude that I worked with in my early 20s, on a lot of that solo acoustic stuff before it became band stuff. He worked with a guy named Matt Goldman, who did a bunch of really cool stuff like Under Oath and just a bunch of stuff. Very talented gentleman and a very intelligent gentleman, also a very kind gentleman. Later I got to work out of his studio in the B room, but just getting to be in that dude's studio and work with him and see how he did things and how he thought about things was huge. Matt Malpass, I got to do a lot of work with him and his brother Jeffrey Malpass. That was a huge learning experience. And then, daddy of them all, Mr. Lee Diaz, Grandmaster Sound Wizard extraordinaire himself. That's the dude that did the Champs record with me, and that's the dude that ultimately made me want to open up a studio and become like a real engineer. Just the efficiency with which he worked and his workflow, and the amount that he knew, not just about music, but about all the electronic stuff that was going on behind it. The components that made up the channel on the SSL board that we were going through at that given time, or the distressor that we were working through, which is a style of compressor. The dude can build microphones and his own studio monitor speakers. Like, he's a genius. It's crazy. Like, he literally...
Is he a double E by trade? Electrical engineer by trade? Do you know? Just out of curiosity.
I know that he's doing a bunch of work for the Florida prison system, engineering, like, these little chipboards that control how the doors open and shut because their system's outdated.
He's got to be a double E.
He's a badass is what he is. And he's one of my favorite people in the whole world,
He was a good mentor for you.
Yeah, he still is, man. I call that dude all the time, and we talk about stuff. And he's still the guy I take all my bands to, because I know how to do it. I'm good at it now, but I'm still nowhere close to what that dude was a decade ago, and he's already got a decade ahead of me of learning new shit.
A lot of catching up to do.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, I've got a new guy that we've brought on, Noah, and he is a sound engineer.
Hi, Noah.
What advice would you have for him with aspirations of getting into music production and specifically being a sound engineer?
Do something else. No.
I hope you like being broke.
No. So, I hope you like ramen and couches. Lots of those in your future. No. So, dude, the new Champ stuff that we're working on is the only thing I haven't taken to Lee. Me and Joe do it out of his bedroom. He's an engineer. I'm an engineer. All we're working with over there is like one 2-channel Audient interface because it's got good AD/DA converters in it. One 500 series Neve preamp. Not even the best one. It's just a good one. That whole lunchbox stuff. We have one AKG 214 microphone. We have a very stripped down setup. But because we know what we're doing with that gear, we're able to accomplish things that sound as good as what's on the radio. We take guitars DI into amp sims and program the bass, I'll say it out loud, you'd never know it. We were talking earlier, Noah and I, about jamming a Econo. This old thing the Minutemen came up with in the 80s. Jam within your means, dude. And that doesn't mean that it has to suck. If you take your time, learn your gear, learn your room, learn your programs, read your shit, dude. Like, that's the whole thing. Learn all the principles of EQ shelving and compression and all that stuff, and just keep doing it. That's the only way you get better, is stay after it and stay learning, You have the internet at your disposal. There's no reason that if anybody says they want to do something, for them to be ignorant about it now.
Can't learn it on YouTube.
I mean, dude, I didn't go to school to be an engineer. I just did it. Yep. And I was lucky. I had some pretty awesome help.
Something to be said for that, for sure.
But, I mean, the internet was everything. There's so many production forums out there. You can learn anything you want to know. And the other thing is, don't be attached to just one idea of how things can be done. Because, dude, you ask 10 engineers the same question, you're going to get 10 different answers. And none of them are wrong. If it sounds right and it's not clipping, you're good.
So what's some of the worst advice that you hear given out in that realm?
That you need like $1 million studio to make a record. That's hogwash. That one piece of gear is any better than another. You have guys say, dude, this is the thing. You got to use this chain for vocals. It's like, no, you don't. I mean, you can do things any number of ways, so don't get attached to anything. A big one is the analog versus digital debate. Now, I will say, if I had my druthers, I'd go all analog all the time, which is what we do down with Lee because he has the studio to do it. But if you don't have that,
so you got to have the equipment.
There are kids in their mother's basements with laptops and a Slate Everything package that are making baller records. So, people that are like, oh, it's analog just sounds so much better. Dude, shut up. Why don't you go back to when you were a kid and getting into it and maybe you were on an Atari tape machine like Lee was. Dude, he still made banger records. Yeah. So, I mean,
and the thing about it is like, even though you as a professional sound guy may be able to pick it apart, you got to remember that the other 98% of us out there
have
listening to
no idea.
No clue.
None whatsoever.
Because I'll be the first to tell you, I mean, I love music. I'm a consumer of good music. I love it more than anything. I am as tone deaf as they come, and there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that I could not.
Well, look, man, there are some rules you need to follow, but most of that is acoustic math. Most of that is gain staging. The principles behind why sound works and how it works when it's done properly. That's it. The rest of it, man, it's up to you. Just do what sounds good to you and don't let anybody tell you shit, because if you think it's banger, it probably is.
Anything you're reading right now? Or how do you consume content?
Well,
if it's not reading.
I read a lot of news, spend a lot of time on social media. I'm one of those. I'm a terrible millennial. It's fine. I've made my peace with it.
Well,
they'll pour memes on my grave, dude. Epstein didn't kill himself.
That's my favorite one going around.
Telling you,
now, dude. There was somebody that dropped an Epstein bomb on
Fox News, dude. I saw that. I was dying. I was screeching.
Yeah, I was dying too. That was good stuff.
Really, dude? I mean, I read a lot of technical stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
and in your industry, I'm noticing as well, so much of it, just like you mentioned with some of your mentors, so much of it is hands-on and experimenting. And it's just like within that video realm of just tinkering and learning little tricks.
Well, it is tinkering, but at the same time, you need to know your gear and know what it can and can't do.
And I keep going back to these video guys that I've been interviewing here lately. There's so much about just learning that camera and breaking down every little thing that one little camera can do and exploring every little shutter speed and all this different little tricks and techniques. And I'm
the guy that prints out the 300-page manual and reads it.
Yeah, see,
I want to know all of it.
I wish
inside and out. But other than that, man, really, I stay so busy that in my downtime, me and my girlfriend we sleep a lot when we're not. We're not working because it's a crazy life, man. I work 2 jobs, sometimes 3, and I play and manage 2 bands. It can be difficult to find time to do things, and quite frankly, I'm pretty tired when all that's said and done.
Yeah.
But I do find time to read comics. I love comics so much.
What you reading?
I'm reading Monstrous.
Nice.
The Monstrous series by Marjorie Liu is just out of this world.
Well, I call a lot of them graphic novels, but that whole comic scene has really come full circle, man, and I just love it. I love to see this new iteration.
So there's that. I'm going to jump off comics and just get into being a nerd in general. I love to play role-playing games. Very, very into some D&D.
Nice.
Magic the Gathering.
Old school.
Tabletop. Anything I can get my hands on. Like, let's just sit around a table and use our wits and have some fun here.
That's great. I think that's a wonderful thing, especially with everybody being so inundated with the social media and the phone stuff, to be able to actually have a game that there's a little bit. Who would have thought 20 years ago we'd be praising D&D as like a socially interactive thing?
Dude, you can play it on your phone now, man. It's bonkers.
I
I sit up at my work and just play D&D at the door at Smith's Old Bar. And people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, shh. My elf is doing some very cool things right now.
That just totally ruined my point then, because I thought it was still old school style. That shows you how.
Well, no, I mean, the old school style is always the preferred way, but, theater of the mind is what they call it. You can, like, still immerse yourself and problem solve and critical think, and it's not the same, but it's, if you need a fix, it'll work. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. We've got barcades and gaming meetups, and comic book shops are coming back, and comic book bars are a thing now.
Well, yeah, I did. I went down to Monday Night Garage. On Monday nights, they have a retro night, and all it is they bring in a bunch of couches, and it's old school video games. It's old school mixing on the turntables, and like I
love vinyl. I have a ridiculous collection of vinyl.
Oh yeah, well then this place is hitting for sure. I mean, you walk around with your headphones on, and you can go from room to room and switch your headphones to different channels, and it's a total trip, man. It totally blew my mind. And then you got, was it my parents' basement down in Avondale Estates?
Yeah, dude, that's my joint.
So we meet up over there on every Sunday, and we'll go rollerblade over, or we'll go inline over to Stone Mountain and back.
Nice.
And then go eat there afterwards. And all the retro video games, that place is awesome, man.
Dude, I spend hours and hours in that place just reading comics and playing games. And
well, it's so funny. The first time I got the invite to the place, and it said my parents' basement, I'm like, are we really meeting at some dude's parents' basement? Like, it never occurred to me that it was the actual name of the place. It totally threw me for a loop.
Dude, it's great people, great atmosphere.
Yeah, great people over there, for sure. What's your favorite item under $100 that you could not live without?
My girlfriend was free. Does that count?
Nope. She's worth more than $100.
Well, yeah, I guess she does cost a lot of money. She's difficult.
I said worth, not cost.
Yeah, that's a fair distinction. No, so all right, some of those under $100 that I can't live without. I would probably say, my Spotify subscription, $10 a month. I don't know what I'd do without my access to music and all of the music. I'm constantly trying to find new music, things I haven't heard, different ideas. It's magical to me.
Excellent point. Great segue. So where does somebody like you, who's already got a good finger on the pulse of what's going on and stuff, where you find the new music? Where do you get new content and all that kind of stuff? Because I'm always looking for that stuff.
I am incredibly lucky for the circle of friends that I have around me, physically here in Atlanta and then also on the internet. So my friends are a huge influence. They show me stuff all the time, turn me on to new bands. On the internet, I'm a part of this group, and I was wondering if it was going to come up in this interview. It's a group called E-Tidiots. The band it's a fan group for a band called Every Time I Die. E-Tid, for short. E-Tidiots are
I love that.
the people who love the
fan
band.
Club, yeah.
We all meet up once a year in Buffalo, New York, for their hometown Christmas festival. It's a complete riot and week of debauchery, and it's like Dragon Con for metalheads, essentially. It's something else.
I never heard of that before.
Everybody ought to have to go once. It's something. But so we do New Music Fridays, and just you're talking about 200 comments worth of new stuff.
Wow.
That people are just jamming on. Everything from metal to jazz to pop to rock. I mean,
it covers the spectrum. It's not just
metal. Well, I mean, it's pretty heavy on metal, but, whatever. There's a lot of other stuff there, too.
Nice.
Midwest emo posting, same thing. People are always talking about music. The internet goes as deep as you want it to go, man.
Right.
I mean, you can find whatever you're looking for, quite literally sometimes. It's something. But then, things like my Spotify Discover Weekly, it's hit or miss. Sometimes it tries to show me things, and I'm like, really? You think I don't know about this? I've been listening to this for a decade. Like, how dare you insult me this way? But
for
other
me,
times,
it's more like with Spotify, it's just that they're sending me crap. It's the stuff I'm just not interested in.
well, it's a lot of that has to do with how much you engage with the app and
Well,
how
that's
you
true.
engage with the app. All it's doing is taking what it sees you doing and trying to send you things that are like it. So, for a person like me that uses it pretty heavily, I get a pretty diverse Discover Weekly. Some better than others. For some reason, it keeps trying to think that maybe this week will be the week that I will decide that I like folk punk. I will never like folk punk. Out of tune, fucking train riding garbage, dude.
Yeah, YouTube does the same thing to me too. They keep sending me these ones. I'm just like, dude,
God, they're the worst with their algorithms, man.
I don't care how many times you
Jesus.
send me that dude's crap. I'm not gonna listen to it because I just don't like it. But anyway.
And then
Please.
another piece of it for me, like I get an insight that most people don't because I work at venues and tons of nights, at least 3 a week, I see something.
I was gonna say you guys have a lot of really great bands,
Right? And I never would have known about it because it's just some little touring band,
They're
and they
small,
come through
yeah.
and just blow my mind, and I'm like, I have to buy your record.
Well, it's really cool. It's through doing this podcast, I've actually stumbled onto a few bands like at breweries and stuff like that. Nathan Shepard out of Athens is a dude that I've linked up with when we were out in Colorado. Ted and Alice Miller. They're kind of in that folky kind of vein, but just happened to be there at the brewery that my buddy owned.
Can I give you some suggestions?
Yes, please. Put out there to all of us because we're always looking for new music.
All right, friends, I want you to remember I did this for you. I love you guys. So I got to give a shout out to Danny Moll, who's in a band called All Caps, and he works at Academia Brewing, who just put on this really, really cool festival that we played, Princess Boys and the Jays. There were so many good bands on that bill. My favorite was La Chupa Scabra. It's a Mexican ska band. They were just
awesome.
I literally almost broke my neck dancing at their set. It was it was wild, man. Another great one, we play with these cats called Ozello, and they play my venue a lot as well. They are just fantastic people.
At Smith Soul Bar?
Yeah, fantastic people, fantastic musicians. They've got some great stuff coming out. You should keep a lookout for that. Mount Royal, our boys in Mount Royal are tearing it up right now. If you're not listening to them, you should be. They're fantastic, and they're also all just great gentlemen.
They're local.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Not for long, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, you guys seem like you guys have got several bands. I mean, well, the ones you're in, obviously. I mean, you guys are like right at the cusp, man, of like really blowing the doors off of this thing.
We're trying. The Word Problem Boys are most excellent. House of Now are amazing. The Light Sequence, we've played with them. They're great.
And is the best way to get to these guys' music is to go to their websites directly? Or what's the best way to get to their music?
All of them have Facebook. Most of them are on Spotify. I think all of them are on Spotify. La Chupa Scrabber is the only one I had trouble finding, and I'm really pissed because I really loved them a lot. That was the most fun I've had at a show in a long time.
What I want to do, I want to know like the best way, because as we're doing this, I mean, we're here to promote you guys and to really promote your cause and the music that you're putting out there. So what I want to know is like, what's the best way for people to consume y'all's music, for people to get to you guys to help grow the?
I think obviously follows on Spotify always help. Sharing those links.
Same thing for the Extraordinary Podcast, by the way.
Yeah, sharing those things throughout your social media helps big time because they don't make it easy on independent artists to be on these platforms.
Not at all.
We went through DistroKid to get our stuff up, and dude, the nightmare was just so very, very real. From how long it took versus what they said it would take, down to on Apple Music, you have to search. Like if you search the Jays Lost on Spotify, it should pop right up. Apple Music, you have to put in the Jays Lost single, and then it's buried. You have to click all songs or all artists or something, and then it's buried under like 18 fucking things. And I'm like, what did we even pay you for, man? Like, what? They don't have customer service, dude, so you can't get that fixed. It just is what it is. Yeah. Better luck next time.
Nothing you can do about it. The one thing I did find that helps, though, is the more that you can get the reviews, the more subscribers you can get, the more traffic that you start to develop, their algorithms do start to slowly improve over time. But
you're
right. It's an absolute nightmare.
It's an uphill battle, man. And it's like, God, why are you going to... I get it, dude. The industry had to retain control. They couldn't let just anybody have open access.
Right, with the whole...
Which is why Spotify's artist platform, their beta, had to get canceled, dude. They couldn't let us have something like that because then anybody could do it. And then why do we need you?
Exactly.
You know, the big wigs couldn't let that fly, I don't think.
Well, I'm just fascinated with this whole evolution of this industry in particular. Like, it's just so much different than any other, really even entertainment industry, the way that it's changing and evolving. And then the only other one that kind of comes close is with the movies and the video content. You're seeing that change a little bit, but nothing anywhere comes close to music.
What I think people could ultimately do, where we've had a lot of successes on Facebook, the marketing course that we took was very specific about Facebook having the biggest usership and the most accessible advertising platform, right? So, you know, bands getting help on Facebook is huge. So leave them a review. Share their page, like their page, follow their page, actively comment on their posts, you know, because that's how things get up-ranked in their algorithm.
So it's very similar to the podcast game for sure.
We can, like, let's say, all right, so the whole purpose of doing these music videos with the Jays and Princess was to get something over 15,000 views that we could send to regional promoters for venues and bars that we would like to play because we don't want to be a local band. Local bands die.
Right.
We want to be a regional band, you know, and string together 7 to 8 markets to where we can start doing little, you know, week-long runs tours, and keep adding markets on it. And, hey, maybe after 6 or 7 months, maybe then it's like 2 week-long runs, you know, once every 2 or 3 months.
Building
you know?
momentum.
Right. So we can take Facebook and market to people in, let's say, Macon, right, if we're going to go play Macon. And, you know, if we already have what they call social proof going, it's going to be a lot easier for those ads to hit their target audience through what we call lookalike audiences. Facebook's a hell of a tool. So, you know, you really want to support those bands, I would follow them on Spotify, and then I would get on their Facebooks and do anything that you are able to do for them. That's the best way to do it. And then, of course, you know, go to a show, buy a T-shirt. You know, tell them they had a good set. Support them. Like,
right?
You know, it can be really discouraging to work so hard on something and be in the hole and be in debt and not be making money. And, like, dude, just because, like, you're at the show and you had a good time doesn't mean the people on stage are necessarily doing okay. Even if they were okay for that 1 45-minute slot that you got to see them, that's not indicative of how the rest of their life is going. So, you know, that one person coming up to them and saying, hey, man, I really enjoyed your show. Thank you guys so much. That can mean everything. It's huge, you know?
Yeah.
So physical support and online support is key. It's just like
all this stuff I'm learning, man. It's so much of it's just grassroots, man. And some of it's just paying attention and getting people to give a rip, you know, just to care a little bit. And I think a lot of people do.
Well, we live in such a momentary culture, man.
Exactly. And I don't think other people like, I certainly didn't realize how important all those likes and subscribe and comments
It's huge.
Really
It's everything, man.
But they really are. It's almost become the currency.
Absolutely, dude. I came from the days where you had to, like, oh man, I'm about to sound old. For the record, I'm only 32. I just happened to be in the generation that was the end of all this. I guess that is kind of
Fit
old.
right in with me, dude.
Well, whatever. So I came from the time where you had to, like, go to a damn Kinko's and print out quarter-page flyers and cut them up right there and then go stand outside a damn Hot Topic or a skate park or something and try to get people to come out to your house show.
Right.
You know, and it's
your
like,
house party.
if you go down to the square in Little 5 Points and, like, you start trying to flyer for a show, people are going to look at you like you got 3 heads, man. And I'm just like, God, that's crazy. Like, the internet is everything now. This is just how we do it.
Yeah, it's a different world, too. If you had a podcast, who would you like to interview, or who do you think would be good for this podcast?
All right. You should take a trip down to Valdosta and interview Lee Diaz. That's one of the smartest dudes I ever met. If you could get Matt Goldman on here, I'd do that too. Those are music engineers and producers. Dudes in the scene that are doing a lot. Let me think, dude. You know, Joe Warren down at the Masquerade is doing a lot and has been doing a lot for the local scene. He is a really good friend of mine and somebody that I very much admire and love. And he cares about the bands that he works with. She's an incredible person. Yeah, dude.
Who would be your dream guy to interview that, like, if you know, that maybe
that's
you
a
don't
tricky
know?
question.
I'm always fascinated from a musician's perspective who they would like to really get inside the head of.
Do I get more than one or just?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, my first one's pretty obvious. I'd want to do Keith Buckley from E-Tid just to say I did it. He's an interesting
Just 'cause
dude.
he's a rock star.
He was a literature major, I believe, and a teacher before he was, before his band was huge. And if you go read through his lyrics, it's not your standard dumbed down metal. It's very intelligent, poignant, interesting, poetic,
Nice.
stuff.
Give me one item on your bucket list.
Currently, I have been incredibly lucky. There isn't a lot of stuff that I wanted to do that I didn't get to do.
At 33, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I've been lucky like that. I don't know if it was luck, hard work, or being in the right place at the right time. I just,
Probably a little bit of both.
I didn't want a whole lot, but I got to do most of the things I wanted, and now I'm trying to help other people do the things that they want. But that being said, you can always add things. Right now, my big one, I want to go. So I surf. I love surfing.
Nice, me too.
I go up to Outer Banks and surf a lot. I think those are the best waves on the East Coast. Florida's trash.
You think they're better than Virginia Beach?
I know they're better than Virginia
so?
Beach. Yeah,
Nice.
when it's running. When it's running,
they're
oh
hitting,
my God,
yeah.
Avon Pier
Well, I mean,
is my
timing's always
jam.
everything,
of course.
for sure. I mean,
You want to hit it in the storm season, ideally. Yeah. So on my bucket list right now, there's this place called Zicatela in the province of Puerto Escondido in Mexico. They call it the Mexican Pipeline,
I'm familiar.
and it's a 10-foot shore break.
Did you hear about the dude that got killed down there?
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
Kind of depressing.
They call it the
but,
destroyer of boards for a reason. It's a brutal wave, and I want to go do it.
Yeah, that looks like, dude, I want to go post up there for about a week or two, man. Like, 'cause
Yeah,
that's what's so
exactly,
cool. It's like,
exactly.
It's just like, you just, because there's nothing else.
I mean,
down
dude,
there.
my pride is not too big to go down there and like just get a surf guide and be like, "Yo, show me how to do this and not die."
Yeah, that's the way to do it, man. I think that's the only way to do it, man.
I'm
Just sit
telling
there
you.
and-
So there's that.
Have you surfed the West Coast at all?
No, man, I never got to make it out there to surf West Coast. I've
It's-
traveled the
it's
West
a
Coast
different
touring
beast,
a
man.
lot, but
It's,
oh
it's
yeah,
pretty
big time,
intense. Oof.
big time. I mean, they got Mavericks out there too.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, if you're trying to do something real stupid.
Yeah, I've never got to go do Hawaii or anything like that, but I got a little taste of West Coast, man, and it's intimidating, or at least it was for me. I mean, it was a while back, but anyway.
I'd kind of like to just get in an RV and go and just travel up both coasts, doing surfing, playing some music maybe, but not on a tour or anything, just,
Where it's relaxed and chill.
Right,
and
right, because a lot of my traveling has either been touring with music or traveling for work, and you never really get to soak in a place. I got lucky. I had to spend some time in Texas after the only tour I ever walked off in my entire life because it was just so bad. I had 2 giant cavities in the back where my wisdom teeth were. I never had them out because they just came in fine. But then they got cavities, and like this whole month I'd been out on the road. It'd gotten to the point where it hurt to take a step. It was bad.
Oh.
I wanted to quit this tour for like 2 weeks, and I didn't have the money to get home. And I knew that wherever I jumped off at, I was going to have to stay there for a second. So I had to wait till I got somewhere where I knew a bunch of people. Luckily, I'd toured Texas a whole bunch when I was first coming up, and I knew a bunch of people. So I got to Houston.
A lot of good people in Texas.
Man, you just don't know.
I do. Half my family lives there.
Oh, well, okay, maybe you do. Maybe you do. Well, so I hopped off in
it's good
Houston, man, and I got to stay with one of my friends' families who has like this mansion-esque house on a lake. And the whole place is covered in art and old B3 organs. Dude has like the Harley that he rode to Woodstock in the backyard.
Nice.
Yeah, man. And after I got my teeth feeling okay, I got to just cruise around Houston and really take it in. And then, go up to Dallas, Fort Worth and take that in as well. And out to San Antonio and take some of that in, And it was just so nice to not have a day sheet to have to live by. And, not show up, load in, sound check, do the show, load out, drive, sleep in some motel, wake up, drive,
grind.
do it again. I mean, people think like when you're touring, you get to see all this cool stuff, and it's like, yeah, sometimes you do.
But
yeah, I got
rarely.
to go see Yellowstone. One day out of a whole 2-month run, I got to go do that. The rest of it was just go, 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 go,
Grind.
go, go,
Yeah.
go. And you miss a lot of stuff like that, It'd be nice to just get in an RV and just go.
If everything goes according to plan, all your wildest dreams are realized, what does your life look like 10 years from now?
Hopefully doing the exact same thing.
I got to come up with a better question. I have yet, for the people that I've talked to, I've yet to get a different answer.
Well, I mean, that's the perfect answer, man. You shouldn't be doing something that you don't love. You know, I'm lucky enough that I've been able to sustain a life. You know, we talked earlier about how difficult it is to be a musician now, more than ever. So the fact that I've been able to stay in it to some degree, small, big, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you're doing what you love, then you're really, really lucky to be able to do it because most people don't have that experience to talk about.
Well, and it's not work at that point, right? I mean,
it is. It's incredibly hard work, and sometimes it's incredibly frustrating work.
It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like you're going to a 9 to 5.
But it's work that I love.
Yeah.
And it's work that means something and is fulfilling to me. That I can get down with. And, you know, I think the days of rock stars are long gone. I think you're probably going to have to work till you die. Probably. Especially if you're us. I don't see that being, we just do this forever and get rich. No, man. You know, there's nothing the matter with being a working class band, and I like the sound of that. I think that'd be just fine by me. You know, so if I had to be doing anything in 10 years, I assume I'm going to have to be doing something. Nobody just gets to freeload their way through life. This is all right. I'm pretty happy here right now, and if it becomes at some point that I'm not happy with this, I'll go find something else that makes me happy.
Well, and what I've found as well is you need to be doing something. There's no fulfillment in what would you do if you had all the success, you had all the money and all the fame and fortune. You can't. You don't sit on your laurels.
No, dude, I'd be so bored.
If you made your millions and stuff, you still want to be making that music. You still want to be making that art, right?
Yeah. I don't do well with idle hands. I don't do well when I'm bored. You want to see me get depressed and anxious? Like, that's when it happens.
Yeah.
That's when bad things start happening, is when I got too much time on my hands. I'm a big fan of if-then statements. I love math. I love science. If I know...
And Excel worksheets, apparently.
You damn right.
That's an Excel thing.
Yeah, right? If I know that I don't do well when I'm bored, then I know I got to be doing something. And if I got to be doing something, then it needs to be something that I'm passionate about, man. I am past the point where I can just go work for some schmuck that I hate just to get a check. I can't do it. Right. It's not in me, man. There's no point.
It's soul crushing, right? I mean,
it is, man.
Takes something out
we
of
weren't
you.
meant to live that way.
We were meant to carry a load, but we weren't meant to go through life like that. What did I not ask you that you wished that I had asked you?
Well, if I could, real quick, you know, I manage these bands, but I wouldn't have anything to manage without the team that we work with. Starting from the band members themselves, you know, Jeremy and John and Cameron and the Jays, that was the first band that I started managing before Princess. I was at a pretty low point when I met those guys. And I was out also, for some crazy reason, just debating getting out of music altogether. Alan, the singer of Princess, was just hounding me to go over and try out for them on drums because they needed a drummer real bad. And just to appease him, you know, I was like, fine, I'll go. Wasn't expecting anything. I have some pretty high standards when it comes to bands and music. And
you actually been around for a minute.
Yeah, I've seen it.
You know what to look for.
Right, and most bands don't interest me. I'm just like, there's nothing, not there's anything wrong with what you're doing. It's just not special to me. It doesn't strike me as anything different.
Right.
Well, I went over there and I played with those dudes, and they showed me the first song, and I was like, all right, can I hear another one? I swear to God, we must have sat there for 6 hours just going over stuff. And then I think we did this for like 14 days in a row, me and Jeremy did, just learning all the stuff, rewriting the parts that needed to be rewritten. It was incredibly special, and we started down this path together. They were there for me when I was low and didn't feel very good. They were there for me when I needed a couch to crash on. They were there for me when I didn't have gas to put in my truck. And most importantly, they were there for me to let me have some small part in building something very, very cool. And I love them very, very much. And everyone that supported that band is just... We'll get to that in a minute. So then there's the Princess Boys. Alan, Taylor, Christian. Christian and Taylor used to intern for me at my first studio.
No kidding.
Yeah, man.
Awesome.
Yeah, it comes full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I went and saw them perform at a house show. I want to say with Word Problems. I was just like, I felt like a bad friend because I hadn't gone out and seen their band yet. But I was always busy, you know. I had stuff going on, and I got the opportunity to do it, so I went out and saw them. And the way that Alan,
Fire.
the way that Alan commands a stage, not to take anything away from how good the music is, but the way he does what he does is just like, dude, it's one of a kind. I've never seen anything quite
I was
like
really
it.
impressed with him when I saw him at Smith's.
Dude, he is a madman. He's our Iggy Pop. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's something else. They were actually thinking about breaking up. That was going to be their last show. And I was just like, whoa, 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 why? So me and Jeremy from the Jays had them come over to the Jays' house the next day and sit down and mediate. And we figured out what the problems were, and we started dealing with them. And I said about a week later, I want to say, me and Joe from 1978 Champs went to Christian's birthday party, and all the cats were present. And we went there on a mission. We did.
Yeah. Had an agenda.
We knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I want to manage
Good for
this
you.
band, man.
Good for
Like, they're too good.
Well, it's cool. You recognized the time for what it was and went for it.
I didn't drum for them until a little later, but over the span of this adventure, man, like, those dudes are my family, and I love them. They're
Well, it's been
also
really cool to see you guys grow too, and kind of coming up, man. It's really neat to see.
Yeah, they're all such
progression.
special individuals and so capable of love and compassion and creativity. It's a really special thing that you don't find very often. And without that and their incredible ability to write these crazy experimental but somehow yet very catchy tunes, there would be nothing for me to do here. You know what I'm saying? And then,
Well, it seemed like they were kind of put in your path for a reason.
you might say that. Then you got Lee down at the studio. We've already talked about him. Being able to take bands to a place where I don't have to worry about the quality of what's going to come out or how the engineering is going to be done or if it's going to be done properly. I don't have to worry about that with Lee. Like I said, he's one of the smartest dudes I know. I can go there and just sit in the back and produce and say, okay, what if we tried this? What if we tried that?
It's so nice to be able to count on people to do their jobs.
Dude, it's
And do
amazing.
them well,
It's
right?
amazing. I know.
Isn't that just such a luxury?
I know that by the time we walk out of that room, I don't care if it takes us 16 hours like it did with No Good, the single that we're about to push. I don't care how long it takes. I know when we leave, it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be right.
And without Lee, that's a huge piece of the puzzle for us. We don't have a mix engineer or a mastering engineer. We have a Lee.
Yeah.
Lee does it
Covers
all.
that.
Yeah, and he does it fantastically. And he's not just somebody we hire. Like, he's a part of our family. He's a part of our team. We love him. That's another dude who sat up with me late nights on the phone when things just weren't going okay. And I've done it for him too.
Awesome.
This is a lot more than just business. I told both these bands, I said, I don't want bands. I want a street gang. That's what I want.
I like that.
And lastly, no, there's a couple more, but we'll move on to Brandon and his crew. I met that dude in a pool hall. A BYOB pool hall in
No kidding.
Swanee, Georgia. I was on a Tinder date that was going terribly, might I add. And I just started talking to these cats because these crazy rollerblader kids were just getting super wasted and being crazy. And I was like, well, y'all sound like fun, and this Tinder date is going to hell in a handbasket.
You picked the right crew. There's no doubt about that.
Well, and I met him, and we start talking about bands and stuff. He's like, oh, I do video. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, show me your reel real quick. And he did, and I was like, do you have a card?
Right.
I called him maybe 3 weeks later, and I was like, hey, so I got something. You wanna meet up and talk? And now, we work together.
Yeah, he's been a godsend for me as well.
Shout outs to Ronnie and Richard as well.
Yeah.
The people that come out and assist. Like,
Yeah,
God,
Richard Williams, Brandon Anderson.
they bring
Hitstring
so
Media.
much to the table. Yeah, Hitstring. Shout out to Hitstring,
Hitstring
dude.
Media. From the Extraordinary podcast as well. I mean, he's been instrumental in what we're trying to do. So.
Well, like we always, before I take a concept to Brandon, usually, sometimes he and I will come up with something and take it to the band. But usually, the way it goes, me and the band sit down and we're like, okay, what's the idea? And we get just a broad statement of here's what we'd like to do. And then we start breaking it down into shots of like, hey, here's our shot list. What do we want to convey with this? And then we take that to Brandon. And then he does his thing, and Ronnie and Richard do theirs. And then we get to day of shoot, right? And you would think, well, that's all of it, right? It's pretty, because it's to the second mapped out.
Yeah. I mean, it's
But-
to the T.
Man, there's something to be said for anarchy as well. And,
Brandon definitely alluded to that in his podcast episode too.
well, dude, the cool thing about that crew is like, man, they'll just come up with an idea. I mean, I do the same thing on set. The fact that our film crew is engaged in what we're doing, they're not just there to get a quick buck and then peace out. They're like, yo, did you think about this or that?
It's a completely different feel than what a normal professional production company would be like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Completely
Again, it gets
different.
down to family, man.
Yeah, it's a family vibe. That's a perfect way to explain it.
Right. You know, and that's a huge part of it. The people that book us, the people that help us, the fans that come and see us. Like, I don't want to build a thing where there's like these barriers in between us as a band and the people we work with or the people we play for. I want to build this inclusive community of just like, hey, yeah, we're the Jays. Hey, yeah, we're Princess, but so are you. You know, I think there's something to that idea.
Well, and I experienced that with trail running. You get this kind of community sense about it that really, I call it that clan mentality. You kind of feel like a part of a clan.
Absolutely,
It's
dude.
a special thing.
I want an army.
Well, and I'll tell you, we got to wrap up. But speaking of all that, it's a good note to wrap up on. I first stumbled onto you through Brandon's video of the not the Jays, but the Princess video for the Fight for You at the Party, and it's a great video first and foremost.
That was a
course,
wild shoot.
coming from a child of the '80s and being a huge Beastie Boys fan. Watching you guys do a cover of that was spectacular, number one. But then the way that you took the video concept, and I know y'all didn't base anything off of that, but it kind of had that same kind of vibe as the original without taking anything from that, without doing any kind of a duplicating effort or trying to steal from the original, anything like that. It had the oomph of that song in it. Not only was that a great video that Brandon did with you guys, but when I watched that video, you're not the front man.
No.
You're not in the main scene, or you're not up front in the center or anything else like that. But I will tell you that there's something about you that I was drawn to. And the fact that, and I even said something to Brandon about it, you have a little special something. And I'm not exactly sure what that is or how it all works or whatnot, but you've been given a little bit of a gift thing there that shows in those videos, in that video in particular. And I didn't know that you were the drummer, and I didn't know that you were the manager when I saw the video. But when Brandon showed me the video, I said, "Who is that guy?" And that's the guy that I want to talk to. And it just so... It was just pretty weird the way it's another one of these very weird, fortuitous moments that don't really make sense. I don't understand why, but I don't ask why. I just go with it. And seeing you on that video was one where it was like, go find that dude and go dig in. And that's what we did. And I'm really, really grateful that we did.
One of the things that I'm trying to teach these bands from a managerial standpoint and from the standpoint of a friend, I've watched a lot of bands, including my own, fall straight on their ass because they could turn it on, but they couldn't turn it off. When the cameras are on, when the lights go up, when it's showtime, you need to turn it on. It's time. They came for a show, and you better give them one. That's the only way you stay around, man. You got to give them something. Something they ain't seen before. Or, you know what, maybe they have seen it before, but not like you did it.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that's it, really. You know, I have more experience than the rest of them at doing that, and it's very difficult to turn it off. You know, there's members of our crew that are working on that right now. It's, and I don't mind saying myself included, it's very difficult sometimes to turn it off. But if you can't turn it on, you don't have a chance.
Well, you could tell that the lead singer is learning that, but you can tell that you've been doing it for a minute. And like I said, you're not in front and center. You're off to the side, but you stand out, man. And there's something to be said about that. But listen, man, I really appreciate you taking the time.
I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, got to know you a little bit better, man. And I'm really, really excited for your bands, Princess and Jays, all the good stuff you guys got coming up. Upcoming shows you want to plug?
November, December.
And we'll put links on the...
we'll update.
Once we go through post-production work, we'll have the little highlights of it.
Yeah, I don't have Wi-Fi in here, so I don't have my schedule in front of me.
I normally start these episodes with where we're at, but I guess we'll end this episode with where we're hanging out tonight.
Punk rock was born in a storage unit that's a 15 by 10. And that's where we're out with amps and gear.
We had to take gear out to the hallway to fit us in, but we got in here, man. We got it knocked out, and I really appreciate it, man. And best of luck to you guys, man.
Hey, thank you guys so
Really
much.
appreciate it. All right, man. See you around. Hey, y'all. Thanks for listening. So what'd you think? What did I miss? Anything that you wanted to hear that I didn't cover? What do you want to know more about? Who would you like to see on the show? Hit us up on social media and tell me what you think. Check us out on iTunes and please leave a review. We're now on Patreon, and your support there helps let us know we're headed in the right direction. We have a lot of exciting new things coming, fascinating guests, and some of the craziest stories you won't believe. So stay in the loop and check out more great content by subscribing at our website, 8keystoGreat.com. Special thanks to my guests and all those of you living an extraordinary life. This is Nate G. We'll see you next week.
Everybody's telling me just be cautious. I lost my conscience. Drink juice from faucets. Opinions are given. I just keep negating, but maybe just maybe you're fucking up crazy.